So if everybody on this call knows who I am, all right, we're good. Okay, so what I want to talk about today, guys, is how the body burns calories. And this is just from a science perspective in terms of the certain processes that we go through as human beings that allow us to burn calories. This now in the beginning, the most important precursor to weight loss, number one at the foundation, is quantity of food that you eat. So what does that mean? That's calories. How many calories are you eating? Now, before someone starts yelling at me or cursing at me, that is not me saying that the kinds of foods you eat don't matter. The kinds of food you eat do matter. I was listening to a podcast one time, and the guy was like, well, would you rather your cells be made up of Twinkies or grilled chicken and vegetables and stuff like that? Obviously, we want the nutrient-dense foods, but they're also going to be calorically much lower. So we're going to be talking a lot about calories because truthfully, at the end of the day, it's a simple energy equation. If you eat less than you expend, you'll lose weight. Now, some people might say, well, I'm eating 600 calories a day. How come I'm not losing weight? If you go to one too far of an extreme, we'll get into that at the end, but there is too far of an extreme where then there's like a recalibration. Your body gets accustomed to eating such a low amount of calories that essentially your baseline becomes much lower, your metabolism slows down, and yada, yada, yada. So we'll get into all of that. So let's get started. I have a little outline that I'm going to read through with you guys. And if you have any questions as we go, just type them in the chat or you can write them down, but there will definitely be a Q&A at the end of this. So how the body burns calories. And you know what? I'll actually share the screen with you guys. All right. So the first process that we undergo, and those of you that have done the InBody with us before have heard me talk about this. So it's called thermoneogenesis, or thermic effect of food. What that means is digesting, absorbing, transporting, and storing food that you consume. That actually requires caloric expenditure. So like I just ate a big meal. I came to visit my mom. I get to see her twice in 1 week. We had a delicious meal. And as I'm sitting here now, I'm sweating, not only because it's extremely hot in this house, but because my body's actually starting to utilize some of this food. It's starting to break down the nutrients. So this can account for up to 10% of your daily caloric expenditure. So if we look at like a pie chart, this is 10%. So now, just by if you give me a thumbs up or not, who is familiar with what a macronutrient is? Meaning, like, do you know what protein, carbs, and fats are? Just give me a thumbs up if you do. Probably read it before. Okay, cool. So how it pertains to thermic effect of food, protein has the highest requirement for your body to break down. So what does that mean? When you eat and consume protein of all of the other macros, fat, carbs, it requires the most amount of energy for your body to break down protein. This is why almost every single who are, which all have one thing in common, which is losing weight through caloric expenditure, there is a basic requirement of eating a certain number of protein. And the amount, I think, differs depending on who you talk to. Like, sometimes people will say 1.1 to 1.3 grams per pound of body weight, which is it's a lot. I had a professor at Michigan when I was in college in a movement science class tell me a long time ago that if you had 0.7 grams per pound of body weight, that would be more than enough. And over the last 3 years, I've proven that because I fast myself every day, which means I only eat twice a day for the most part. And my protein consumption used to be in the upwards of over the amount that I weighed, which was over 200 grams. Now, I just try to stay somewhere around that 0.7 or 70% of my body weight. So if I weigh 200 pounds, 70% of that, that's basically the amount of protein that my body would require to sustain the functions of everything that I'm doing. And that's just a general baseline. I know a lot of you guys have done macros or things like that, and that 1 gram per pound of body weight is always really hard to hit. And frankly, your body might not even be utilizing all that anyway. One of the most popular diets now is like people going with a vegan lifestyle, right? Hey, if it works for you, I think that's great. But what is one of the biggest knocks on that? Where do you get your protein? How do you get ample protein? And it's for a simple fact that eating too much carbs, too much fat, generally, those are the things that you need to manipulate. So if I'm crafting a diet for someone, I start with how much protein are you getting? So if you're getting ample protein and ample amount of vegetables per day, protein and vegetables, each person is going to do differently with carbs and fats. So for example, I'm someone that is very fat sensitive, meaning if I eat too much fat, my body composition changes, me personally, for the worst. If I eat a lot of carbs, I mean, I can eat 400 or 500 grams of carbs. I know it's wild. I won't gain weight, but that is because of how my body processes carbohydrates, the activity level I have. So when somebody says, hey, what do you eat? Don't do what I do because you'll gain weight probably. So that's where we manipulate stuff. Some people are fat sensitive. Some people are carb sensitive. I'm very much like, if you eat like neutral and a well-balanced approach, you'll probably be good, again, mitigating the amount of calories you're consuming. So one of the metabolic processes, thermic effect of food, that accounts for about 10% of the calories you burn. Now, this is something that I'm not sure the truth to this, but it's kind of what I think. So what is probably the easiest macro for all of us to overeat? I know you're all yelling, carbs. Yeah, carbs. And which macro is the easiest for our body to break down and requires the lowest thermic effect of food? Yep, you guessed it, carbs. So my thought process is, if it's easy for our body to break down, then when we're stressed out, it would naturally be something that you crave, outside of that it's delicious, but it's easy for our body to break things like that down. So that being said, that is why protein is important. You need to overdo it, but it is a good baseline and basis. So let's get into the next slide now. So the next component is something that I refer to as daily activities, but it's called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So basically, this is all the activity that you do on a daily basis that isn't deliberate exercise. So it's not you going to the CrossFit gym, it's everything else that you do. It could be walking room to room, gardening, fidgeting. NEAT accounts for 100 to 800 calories. There's like a wide range. So someone that is very a desk worker, like a desk job, versus like me, a trainer that I'm moving around and walking around all day, or a construction worker, your NEAT is still going to account for 15% of your daily caloric expenditure. But this is why certain industries and jobs, they're going to have a higher burn based on the physical activity they're doing outside of the intended stimulus of exercise. Okay. So now we've accounted for about 25% of the puzzle, right? So there's still a good chunk left. So now we have exercise. This is the one that you really have the most control over, but it only accounts for about 5 to 10%. And that is a big portion, guys. You can make pretty tremendous strides here, because at the end of the day, healthy weight loss is half a pound to a pound a week. We're not trying to lose 5-6 pounds a week for an extended period of time. Slow and steady will always suffice, because you're not doing anything that's unsustainable. So physical activity, exercise, tennis, chasing your dog, going to the CrossFit gym, riding a bike, going for a run. These are by far the most variable factors that determine how many extra calories you burn in a day, right? And this is what you're most in control of, because it's how much are you doing on a daily basis to get an extra caloric burn. Weight gain is complicated. It's a combination of genetics, hormones, your diet, the impact of your environment on lifestyle, including, really important, guys, sleep. physical activity and stress. All of these factors result in an imbalance in the energy equation. You gain weight, and this is why I bolded this, when you eat more calories than you burn, or if you burn fewer calories than you eat, okay? So it's an equation. Now, some people more calories with like aerobic exercise. One of my favorites is just walking. It's simple. It's not that hard to do. We can all do it. Getting fresh air is really good for you, but you can also do stuff that's a little more rigorous. Strength training is definitely my favorite. I'd say at least 2 to 3 times a week. Muscle tissue in general, as you'll find out when we get into the final category, burns more than fat tissue does. So muscle mass is a really key factor. Especially by age 30, every 10 years, we undergo something called sarcopenia. All of us do, which is the loss of muscle mass. So when you lose muscle, your body becomes less efficient at burning calories. Okay, that's why weight-bearing exercise is really important. So lifestyle activities, any extra movement helps burn calories. Look for ways to walk more, move for a few minutes, take the stairs, park further away. All these things that we've told you, one of my favorite things to do to suggest to people is go for a 10-minute walk after every meal. So what does that do? Well, number one, it definitely improves your digestion. Okay. So it's really good for your digestion and kind of like just helps you digest. Like if you ever have a heavy meal, like, oh, I feel so full, I want to sit down. Go for a walk. Kind of helps start getting everything going. But secondly, if you follow this 3x10 rule, by the end of the day, you would have walked 30 minutes. The average person will walk a mile in about 15 to 20 minutes. So that's going to mean about 1.5 miles to 2 miles extra per day just by walking after you eat. And it's a simple task for you guys to try to do now, right? Because we're home. Maybe we're in a neighborhood. Like if you're somewhere, obviously we're going to be passing million people. Wear a mask. I'm not asking you to sprint outside, but be safe. But you walk, that's going to add up for a lot of people, guys, to 3,000-4,000 steps extra per day. What does that amount to by the end of the week? I mean, the end of a week, we're talking about 7.5 to 10 miles. End of the month, it could be 40 miles. End of the year, we're talking over 500 miles. 500 miles of walking just by walking 10 minutes after every meal. I know it sounds crazy, but like if you do that, guys, the little things add up. Maybe you only do it once a day for now, but these are things that will continue to add up. And the reason I'm not saying go for an hour walk is because 10 minutes of your day is a lot easier to carve out first thing in the morning, middle of the day, end of the day. It's just easier than me telling you to go walk for 2 hours. So now let's talk about what burns the most calories. So what is the biggest portion of this equation? And it is something called basal metabolic rate. So we have an in-body scale at the gym, which tells us this, right? So anybody that's ever been on the in-body you'll be able to see what your BMR is. So your BMR, depending how you look at this equation, could be anywhere from 65 to 70% of your daily caloric expenditure, okay? Now, a little bit about BMR. Metabolism is a process by which your body converts what you eat and drink into energy, even at rest. So BMR is your basal metabolic rate. You're like all these hidden functions, breathing, circulating blood, adjusting your hormone levels, growing, repairing cells, they burn calories, and it makes up the majority of what you burn. Again, that's called basal metabolic rate. Some people refer to it as your metabolism. Several factors that determine your individual BMR. The biggest one is your body size. So the bigger you are, the higher your BMR. Your sex, generally men have higher BMR because they are larger than women. Your age, as you get older, you'll have lower muscle mass, which means you're going to have a lower BMR. So these three things will factor into how your body burns calories. Now, a lot of these are, they remain fairly consistent, guys. Like if this isn't something that you're not going to change it too drastically. I mean, I suppose if you weighed 400 pounds and you drop down to 200, your BMR is actually going to go down, because remember, your body mass is lower, but as a smaller person, you're going to require less calories to kind of maintain that overall balance, right? So BMR is the biggest factor. So this is why for a lot of people, there are BMR calculators online, or this is a really good place to start for how many calories should you be eating in order to lose weight. If you start around that BMR number, most of you are going to be able to lose weight. So I'll use me as an example. At rest, my BMR is around 20, I think it's 2107. I think I burned 2,107 calories at rest, okay? So if I were to want to lose weight, I would start around that baseline. I would say, okay, I'm probably going to want to eat anywhere from 2,100 to 2,300 calories, knowing that I'll probably burn around 2,800 calories. So if that's the case, that means that I'm in a deficit of 500 calories a day. So by the end of the week, in theory, I should be down a pound. 7 days times 500 calories is 3,500 calories. 3,500 calories is 1 pound. So I would be down a pound. Now, that might be unsustainable for me. So maybe I say, okay, maybe 500 calorie deficit a day is too much. Maybe I'm just going to do 250, which would mean by the end of the week, I'd be down half a pound. So within a month's time, I'd be down 2 pounds, but I'm doing this in a sustainable way. What would 250 calories consist of? I mean, it could be as simple as me cutting out a large banana and 1 hard-boiled egg. That would be more than 250 calories. It's not a lot, guys. It's like 1.5 light beers. It's a non-measured serving of a glass of wine. Cutting that out on a daily basis, that would create that total. And guys, again, I'm giving you these roundabout figures based on myself, but this is just how you can kind of construct and think about this from that perspective. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was what happens when you try to do this to an extreme, right? So like, we'll have people that they may burn, let's say, like I had a friend of mine who wants to like lose weight, and he's a pretty big guy. And he said to me last night, he's like, oh dude, he's like, I've only eaten 600 calories today and it's night time. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool if you do that for a week and you want to get weight off quickly, but that's not like the healthiest way about doing this, right? And what happens chronically long-term, I have an article that I pulled up, but basically like your body, like if you create too much of a deficit, right? And your calorie intake dips too low for too long, your body goes into, and I hate referring to it as this, is starvation mode, because that doesn't really exist. That's not like a real thing, but everyone's probably heard that, so we'll just starvation mode, right? So you go into starvation mode and your body will start to store fat because it doesn't think it's getting anything. Now, why does your body store fat? Your internal organs, like your brain, especially this guy up here, likes to feed off of fat. So when you're not getting enough, your brain never stops working, especially when you're sleeping. It's still going. So you don't need enough calories. The calories that you do eat start to get stored as body fat. And then also your caloric requirement, your body kind of adapts to it, right? So like your caloric requirement will start to drop down. And then there's something called reverse dieting, where in weird cases, if people have been chronically under eating for too long, adding back calories actually will say speeds up their metabolism, and then they start losing weight again, because it's almost like we're recalibrating. You cannot be in a caloric deficit you do not want to be in one for an extended period of time. And it just hormonally, guys, it's really not good for you to do that. Couple of other things. So your metabolism slows down. You're burning calories much slower because you're trying to conserve energy stores. So basically, you kind of plateau and you stop losing weight. Eating too few calories can start basically a vicious cycle where you cut calories to the point where your metabolism slows down. You stop losing weight. You get really frustrated because you think you're going to lose. And then what happens? You start overeating and you start gaining weight again. You're like, well, shit, this didn't work. When the truth is, it's because the expectations we set are too high, right? We watch shows like The Biggest Loser. These people go there 200 pounds overweight. They work out all day, literally all day. They have nothing else to worry about, nothing to do. And guys, by week 2 or 3, they're only losing like a pound or two. You know, it's so I want you to think about that, like the sensationalization of everything. It's not a race. And what I tell everyone in weight loss is like, unless you gained all of this weight in the last week or month, like, excuse my language, but stop being so fucking impatient. Don't expect to lose it in a week or a month. You gained it over the course of 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I don't think it's going to take that long to lose it, but it might take 6 months. It might take 9 months. It might take 12 months. But wouldn't you rather not feel deprived, see slow and steady progress, and understand that weight loss is not a graph like this? It doesn't just go straight down. There's going to be peaks and valleys, but you look at the overall trend. And are you at the end of the week down? At the end of the month, are you a little bit lower? At the end of 3 months, are you going down? And that's really where the magic happens. But again, this all goes back to how many calories are you eating? How many are you expending? Now we know 10% is how your body breaks down food. So we can increase that a little bit by making sure we're eating the right foods, getting protein. It's going to help. The biggest portion of it, BMR, it's really predetermined. So where can you make up this like caloric expenditure? And what that comes down to is the physical activity and exercise you're doing in that NEAT, the non-exercise activity thermoneogenesis, which is job related, right? So like if you're in an inactive job where you're sitting down a lot, then you're going to have to rely more on exercise. Exercise doesn't always have to look like you pumping weights or getting your heart rate up. That's why I gave you the suggestion of walking. You move more, you lose more. And that's just a really simplified version of this. So I think there's a couple more points of this article. So I'll give you guys a personal anecdote about the caloric restriction for too long. So I've been fasting now, and I started fasting, I think it was the end of 2017. I started doing it because I went to an acupuncturist that told me that I was, he said, you were really bloated. I said, I don't feel bloated. He's like, yeah, well, I can tell just by like hitting on your, I didn't know what the hell this guy was talking about. I was like, how the hell would he know just by touching my stomach? Like in doing this weird thing where he like was hitting my stomach and it sounded hollow, which was really weird because I couldn't do it, that I was bloated. So I was like, all right. So I go home, I start researching, and I'm like, fasting, this looks interesting. Let me, start reading about it. And then, of course, like an idiot, because I do everything to the extreme, literally the next day, I just fasted 16 hours and I went right into a 16-8 fast. It's called the Lean Gains Protocol. I wouldn't recommend doing that just because like your body needs time to get acclimated. So fasting, you could start with 12 hours, then up at the 13 to 14. By the course of 4 to 6 weeks, you're up at this fasting for 16 hours where you're not consuming anything and then eating all your calories within an 8-hour window. So long story short, I start fasting and I'm getting good results. I'm feeling better. Like physically, I'm going through the process. And for like a 6-7 month period, I'm really feeling amazing. My body fat's dropping. I get my body fat so low that I'm like, wow, I never thought I could get my body fat this low. But it got to the point where even some people in the gym are like, how much weight are you going to lose? Like I got so thin. And I became like, it was almost obsessive with the fasting where it was like, I wasn't actually hungry because you don't get hungry. And I would go like literally 22 hours and I wouldn't eat anything. Meanwhile, I'm working out twice a day. I'm walking like 25,000 steps. So you can imagine now, like, holy shit, like what Chris just told us, like, wouldn't he just keep losing weight? Well, no. So what starts happening is you start noticing some weird stuff. So like dizziness, anxiety starts to go up. You're irritable, like you can't sleep very well. But what I started to notice now, at my lowest, I went down to 6.5% body fat. That is like crazy, crazy low. And what I started to notice was I do an in-body every month. So every month, my weight stayed the same, but my body fat kept going up. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't get it. So what did I start doing? I was like, well, if I work out more, then my body fat will drop. I think it was a 6 or 7 month period, guys. My body fat doubled. It went up 100%. So my body fat for an average healthy human was still very low. But to go from 6.5% to like 12.5%, 13% in 6 months, that's not healthy at all. So doubling that range, right? And what I finally figured out was, it took me a while of trial and error. The second I started eating more, like I cut my fasting window to 14 hours and I started kind of making myself eat more, what started to happen? My body fat started to go down again. And now I'm at a comfortable point where it's not necessarily for me. The reason I do it was not for losing weight. It's a health thing. During my 8-hour window, I am not concerned with how many calories I'm eating. It's not about caloric intake for me. It's just about only eating 2 meals because that's what feels good for me. I like to feel stuffed when I eat. I like to eat a huge meal, which I don't recommend for everyone. But this has taken me 3 years and a lot of anxiety and frustration kind of fluctuating up and down like this. But I just kind of wanted to paint that picture of what happens when you take it to too much of an extreme. Like I was probably burning 6,000 calories a day and consuming 1,000 calories. Inadvertently, I wasn't doing it on purpose. It just like, I was like, wow, now that I look at it, it makes sense. So I kind of wanted to leave you guys at that point and now basically open up the floor for questions because there are a lot of factors that go into actual weight loss. But I think just understanding from a scientific perspective how the body actually loses weight, you can really start to make some simple adjustments with what you're doing, right? So if anybody has any questions, please unmute yourself. We'll try to go one at a time. And somebody might say something, and then it might spark a question for you.
Hey, Chris.
Hey.
So I had a question, like how do you find out whether you're carb or fat sensitive?
So there's not really like a test for that, right? It's because I think for most people, the baseline has to be around protein. I think in the past, what you could look at where you're at now, right? Like what your current body composition is now. Like, how do you look? How do you feel? Do you feel like you're overweight? Do you know what kind of weight you would like to be at? And then this is just a simple exercise. Start to jot down and write down all the foods that you're eating on a daily basis. Put those into categories. Is this a carb? Is this a protein? Is this a fat? See where the vast amount of your calories are going, right? And if you see that you feel you're 20 pounds, I'm making this up. Let's just say you felt like you were 17 pounds overweight and you wanted to lose weight and your diet was made up of 80% carbs. Be like, well, I don't know if you're carb or fat sensitive. I just think you're eating too many carbs right now. So a good baseline metrics for a lot of people that I think works is like a 30-30-40 split. And that's not like a be all end all. That's like something that you can work your way around, or you can even back into it by saying, okay, what is my basal metabolic rate? You can do a calculator online to do that. You can look at that, right? Or you can get an in-body at the gym and that number, it'll tell you that. So let's just say it's 2,000 calories, right? Now, let's say you're a 200-pound male and we know that we want you to eat 0.7 grams per pound of body weight, right? So let's say 200, because you weigh 200 pounds, 0.7 is the ratio. I'd say, Paolo, okay, you're going to have 140 grams of protein a day, okay? So if you have 140 grams of protein a day, we know that protein has 4 calories for every gram, okay? So if we have 140 and we multiply that by 4, that means 560 calories of your day are made up of protein, okay? And remember, we're using that BMR number as the baseline as to like how you're gonna lose weight. That's the amount of calories. So when I take away the 560, that means that we have, hold on. That means that we have a leftover 1,440 calories. What I would do is evenly distribute that amongst fat and carbs, get a baseline, and start to see how you feel. Maybe it's too much fat. And how do you know if it's too much fat or too much carbs? Well, you can tell simple things like 1, how do you feel? 2, how are you sleeping? And 3, not to get graphic or disgusting, but what are your bowel movements like? And that's kind of like a baseline of where I would start. There's really no right or wrong answer to tell you. It's like, for example, some people could go on that ketogenic diet and do really well on it, where some people can't because their body cannot process or metabolize that much fat. And it's kind of one of those trial and error things. So
Right.
I'm not sure if that answers or helps.
It does. It does. So if you were to maintain, so you do the calculations and your BMR ends up at like 2,500 calories, right? And you
Yeah.
maintain that BMR without being in a deficit, do you still lose weight?
Well, you will, because remember, that's only 65 to 70% of the calories you burn. So we're not taking into account thermic effect of food, exercise, or the daily activities that you're doing. So yes, in theory, you should be in a caloric deficit if you stay right around that BMR number. Yeah.
Okay.
That's why it's a good baseline to start. And that's why a lot of diets will tell you start here with my free online BMR calculator.
Yeah. Yeah, I count macros, and so I've been doing a lot of research and trying to like learn about that. But I would put myself in a like more of a deficit than my BMR. So if I had like a 25, I would end up like giving myself 1,500.
Yeah, and that's the problem. It's too much because you lose weight quicker, but eventually over time it becomes unsustainable. And what happens? You binge, you eat a lot, and then you end up gaining it back. So that's why I would start right at that number, and then slowly, just slow, steady trickle. That's all. Half a pound to a pound a week, guys. That's really good weight loss. It really is.
All right, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome, man. I had a question come in on the chat. How does age, hormones affect carb or fat sensitivity? Lisa, I'm going to be honest with you. I do not have the answer to that question. I can definitely get some information for you. I know how age affects your ability to burn calories based on what I told you before, because generally speaking, men and women, men hold more muscle than fat than women do. So generally men are more muscular than women do. Women also have sexual reproductive organs, which make them about, on average, like 10-ish% higher in a body fat realm. So like a really healthy normal for a man body fat wise is like 15%. For women, it's like 20 to 25% is a really healthy range. So number one, because of your sexual reproductive organs, women are always going to carry more fat than men. Number two, because you carry less muscle mass, and muscle is one of the biggest precursors to, we'll say like in quotations, speed up your metabolism. That's why strength training is important. I find that for women, generally, their BMR is lower. It's harder for them to burn as many calories, which is why every single protocol I've ever given a woman is always less calories than I would give a guy. Like average, usually weight loss, like if I'm giving, and these are averages, I would say guys somewhere around 1,800 to 2,000 calories. And this isn't factoring anything in. Women around 1,100 to 1,300 calories. Like that's like a very broad, vague starting point. So like if you're like, oh my God, I'm only eating 500 calories, chances are you're probably under eating. But in terms of how age actually affects it, that I wouldn't know if your sensitivities have changed to it because of age. Remember, the old adage for people that as you get older, it gets harder to lose weight. Yes, but it doesn't get impossible, because I think your value system and what's important changes, right? So when you were 20 or 25 and you might have prioritized yourself, at 40 to 45, you might have kids. You might have a really, really super important career. And those things stress you out. So, and I'm not calling you out for this, but you go home and you want to enjoy 2 glasses of scotch. Those things they're going to factor into the overall picture. So I don't know. Obviously women have a much harder time because of the hormones. And as you get older, you'll end up going through menopause and all these things. And that all changes, but it doesn't make it impossible to lose weight. It just makes it different. It makes it more challenging. But again, at the end of the day, if you are intelligent about how you mitigate consuming enough calories, but making sure that it's less than you expend, that's why I don't like snacking. That's why I hate snacking. You know why? Because snacking, there's no accountability, and no one is ever going to say, I ate 3.5 potato chips and they weighed 1.2 ounces and I had 4 almonds and exactly half an apple. They don't say that. I had a couple chips, I had a piece of fruit, I ate this leftover stuff off my kid's plate. It's like, okay, so what does that add up to? Because if we're going through small margins, then everything counts, right? And that's really where the sustainability is important, because yes, on a weight loss diet, like I'll bring up what Paulo just said, he may create 1,000 calorie deficit and it'll work for a month to lose 10 or 15 pounds because he has this big window, right? But if we're doing it sustainable, because we don't want it to just be a month, we want it to be a lifelong process, or 2 years till you get to the point where you lose weight. If you're constantly snacking and not factoring in all these little things that you're eating, and we're only expecting a half pound to a pound a week, guys, every single calorie is going to add up. I did this exercise. She's going to kill me, but I'll do it anyway. So my girlfriend really enjoyed eating these, what the hell were they called? Orange. They're like, these candy, like these orange slices. Okay. So 3 of them, 3 pieces. Nobody eats 3 pieces. Everybody eats more than 3, but 3 pieces was 140 calories, right? So let's divide that out. That meant that every 1 piece was about 46 calories. That doesn't sound like a lot, right? Now let's just say nothing changed for the whole year, but you ate 1, just 1, which nobody does. We just ate 1 every single day. So that adds up to an extra 17,333 calories, which if we divide by 3,500, if you changed absolutely nothing, you just had 1 orange slice every day, you'd gain 4.86 pounds. That's why it matters. That's why counting stuff matters. And I don't think you need to be neurotic, but calories in, calories out, it's very important. So again, Lisa, I could try to find out more info on that for you, but I don't have an exact answer on that, on the sensitivity and age. I'm sorry. Anybody else? Anybody else? Come on, guys. I know somebody has a question.
I have a question. Sorry.
Lori, she will kill me. Go ahead, Daniela. What was your question?
Sorry, I was too busy eating. Yeah, so your fasting story was interesting to me because I feel like I enjoy fasting. But I don't know, like, for example, sometimes I'll do I think like I've tried 16/8 and that like does not work for me. Like I feel like my hormones like went out of whack, but sometimes I'll do like a 24-hour fast like once a week for like a little while. And I found that hasn't been like, it doesn't feel like, I usually like the way I feel, like I feel pretty good. I just want like, I guess it just depends on how you feel, because say like Wednesday, say I've been like fasting on Wednesday, and that's usually like also a day like I don't, like I take it easier, like I'm not really doing workouts, I'm like walking, but I'm like not really working out. But there probably is an argument for like not doing that like every single week. I
have an actual fasting protocol I can give you. So first of all, 16 felt like too much. 12 hours is a good starting point. Something between 12 to 16. The 24-hour fast, this is from the experts who have done a lot of research in the area. I wouldn't do it more than once a month.
Really?
Yeah, and then you could do something like an extended fast. There's a company called Prolon.
Yeah.
Prolon is essentially
Walter Longo's.
yes, Dr. Walter Longo. So it's like an extended, like a 5-day window where you're eating basically like a 600 to 800 calorie amount. And the idea is it's almost like a detox and system reset. But caution, during that phase, you should not be working out. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's more contraindicated for women. Like they say, if women eat too few calories, it could affect menstrual cycle and stuff, especially in younger women. So I would definitely caution you and get the advice of a doctor on that, especially if you feel like something like that has happened in the past. But really simple, guys. A 12-hour fast is simple. Imagine you eat dinner at 8 o'clock. You don't eat anything else, and you don't eat the next day till 8 a.m. Nothing, no calories. It's not that hard. And that 12 hours is good for everyone. The idea behind that is you're kind of giving your internal organs some time to chill out, not be consuming calories all the time. If you were noticing, maybe cut it down a little bit. You can try it. For me, I find that I was never hungry in the morning, and I used to force myself to eat, and I'd always feel sick. But that's anecdotal. That's just me. I know for women, they got to be a little more careful with it. So it's something that I would definitely kind of look into. I just got a question. What do you recommend if you're really hungry and need something that's not horrible? Well, the first question I would ask is, one, how much sleep are you getting? Because a lot of times if you're not sleeping enough, you're going to be craving stuff. So that's the first place I'd look. Ample sleep, minimum 6.5 hours, and I'm being generous. So if you're someone that's feeling that way, that's the first thing. The second thing would be hydration. How much water are you drinking? A lot of times when people think they're hungry, they're actually thirsty. I don't like giving like a good baseline, like how much water should I drink? Because the truth is, drink when you're thirsty, but a healthy amount would be, I weigh 200 pounds, I should drink 100 ounces of water. If you're someone that drinks a lot of caffeine and coffee and all these other things that dehydrate you, you're probably going to need to drink more. So those are the first two things I would look at. And then in terms of what you could eat, I mean, you're asking the wrong person, because I eat carrots. I like carrots. So I eat carrots and fruit. That's what I like. I mean, do I occasionally go crazy and enjoy crumb cake and stuff like that? Yeah, absolutely. Do I eat pizza? Yes, I do. But most of the time, 90% of the time, I'm eating the same stuff. I eat rice, white rice. I like it. It just digests quickly for me. I eat protein, I eat lots of salad and lots of vegetables. And that's for me what works for me. But again, guys, it's individual. So a lot of you guys are going to find different things work for you. Anybody else? No.
Hey, Chris, this is Monica.
Hey,
One
Monica.
thing I'm really struggling with is keeping track of calories. I mean, we have amazing apps such as MyFitnessPal, etc. But it's just really hard when you're not scanning the barcode, when you kind of make something on your own, but in that making on your own, you have not necessarily like a clear cut of, 50 grams of broccoli and a steak. Like it's a little bit more of a this and that. So just kind of, how do I not overcalculate, or how do I not undercalculate these things, and how do I keep motivation on tracking?
Well, so the first thing I would do is track. So it may be MyFitnessPal might be a pain in the butt. Write it down. Just journal it. Write it down. Because a lot of times if people write it down and they look at it, they're like, wow. Because that's what I used to have people do for me. They're like, I don't want to show you my food log. I'm like, why not? Just show it to me. I want to help you. But like when you write it down and journal it, you're like, damn, I don't remember that I ate that. And a lot of times it's because people do unconscious eating. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, most meals that you make, and this might not be everything, but you can weigh the protein out at least, right? Make sure you're getting enough protein. So write everything down, make sure you're getting enough protein, which for women, you can do like a handful, right? Like a full palm size, or maybe like 3 to 4 ounces would be like a good total. That would be a starting point. Now from there, how else do you fill the rest of your meal? Vegetables would be one good way. The thing that I'd be really careful about weighing and measuring, which is where the calories can go haywire, is fats, like oil, right? So like taking a bottle of, and this is what I do, again, but I'm not trying to lose weight. I take oil and I do this. That's not a good measurement if you're trying to lose weight, because depending on how fast the pour is, I mean, a tablespoon of olive oil is 120 calories. You could easily get 500 calories in a salad if you put, too much in. Measure the protein, measure the oils and stuff you're cooking with, but more importantly than anything, write it down, because then you have the accountability of actually seeing what you're doing. And if you want to take it a step further, you can start to write down when it's happening, because if you notice every night at 8:47, you want to have 6 peanut M&Ms, well, what the hell's going on throughout the course of the rest of the day that's causing you to want to have those peanut M&Ms at 8:47? It could be a multitude of things, but you'll start to notice the trends. And when you notice the trends and you start to learn your body and how it reacts to things, that's the best education you can possibly have, because again, we're all different. So we're all going to react to things differently. Like, I bet there's some people in here that could drink a glass of milk and nothing will happen to them. Their stomach will be completely fine. That is not the case. If I drink a glass of milk, my stomach will not be completely fine. Different. Some people have intolerances to gluten. Some people get sick, like physically sick, throwing up if they eat gluten. I could eat pizza and all that stuff. I might get bloated, but I mean, it's not going to bother my stomach all that much. And you start to get into these food sensitivities. I have a really weird one. If I eat anything really processed with sugar, I kid you not, I start profusely sweating right under my eyes, like dripping sweat from my eyes. I don't know why. Nobody in my family has that. Never heard of it. But it's almost like my body's like rejecting it. And it's like the second I start to feel sick, it starts to happen. So, any other questions, guys?
Chris, it's Carolyn.
Hey, Carolyn.
You've talked a lot about rice. I see Alex and Sandra posting about it on Instagram. What's the deal? Why do you love it so much?
Okay, so number one, I am Hispanic and I grew up eating rice my whole life. So I love it. It's delicious. That's the first reason. It's a really easily digestible carbohydrate. So for me, it's like so for some people, there might be more vitamins and minerals to like a sweet potato, right? Like people like sweet potatoes, so they'll eat that. I personally just don't like how sweet potatoes taste. I don't like them. And for me, for something to be sustainable long-term and be realistic, I don't want to eat something that I don't like, right? So like, I know with carbohydrates, and for me, I have like a rough estimate. Like if I were to actually think about how many calories I'm eating, probably just based on what I consume, I know that because I'm not shifting in weight, I'm probably eating around 2,500 calories a day. Now, keep in mind, I'm eating that in 2 meals, which means each of my meals are really big. The vast majority of the carbs that I eat come from fruit and rice. That's it. Rice for me is really easily digestible. Why white rice over brown rice? Every study you see that tells you brown rice is better, there's going to be a study that says white rice is better. I look at the population. The Chinese population or the Asian population, the Indian population, 3 billion people on the planet, they eat rice, white rice, and they have absolutely no adverse reaction to it. Add in Hispanic populations that do the same, you probably have 50 to 60% of the world that are just consuming that. So there's no food intolerances that I'm aware of. It's a very easily digestible source. However, remember, consuming massive quantities of that, I'm not suggesting that eating white rice is the best thing for every single person to eat. I'm not. A sweet potato is probably a healthier option. Quinoa is probably a healthier option. I like white rice. So, I mean, that I don't know if that answers your question, but for me, it works. Any other questions, guys? Anybody else? No? Well, listen, if you guys have any questions that come up after the fact, send me an email. I'm happy to answer. Thank you guys for joining me. One of the things that I'd start to say that you guys can control right away, you can go online to a BMR calculator. you can try to calculate what your BMR is. Okay. That's a good baseline as to how many calories you should approximately be eating. You can start by measuring your protein. You can start by writing down the food that you're eating. Make sure you're getting a lot of sleep. Make sure you're drinking enough water. And guys, just make sure you're moving. I would love to see you guys either in the Zoom classes or doing your own thing, following along, walking, get outside, get some exercise, manage your stress levels. All those things, guys, with your hormones, one of those things, your stress is up here. This like yo-yo, it doesn't make it any easier for you guys to lose weight. So that managing of stress is really important, and exercise and sleep play a pivotal role in doing that. So guys, thank you so much for taking the time this evening to sit and talk to me. I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your night. And again, if you have any questions at all, email me. It's just chris@westchesterfit.com. All right, guys. Good night.
Thank you, Chris.
Take care. You're very welcome, guys.
Good night.